Hi, Coach Howie here of the Howie Endurance Project. I want to share this short running video with you where I'm going to point out some key elements to fast running form. I want to start by saying there's no one exact right way to run, but these four elements here that are coming up seem to show up in no matter what form it is when the runner is fast. So my buddy Brandon Gulori helps me make this video. Brandon ran steeplechase for LSU, and in all my years of coaching, he's probably the best runner I've ever worked with. His form is just impeccable. Learned a lot from him. So we'll use him as an example throughout this video. I'm going to start with posture. Three main things. I use the acronym TLC to talk about what your posture should look like. There's a concept called the forward contact line that I'll explain, and then finally a concept called the power arc that I'll explain using Brandon as a model here. So TLC, T standing for tall, L for lean, and C for core. I'm going to freeze Brandon here. Notice how tall he is. His chest's up, his head's up, his chin's up. His body's just tall. He also has a slight forward lean that's perpetuating his stride, and his core is tucked up underneath him. In other words, imagine his belt buckle tucking in as he's running. Forward contact line is a line that we draw. We find the point right where the center of gravity is traveling over the ankle joint, and we freeze the runner right there. And then from here, what we're looking for is we want to draw a line from the athlete's ear down through his ankle bone. So I'm going to draw that line now. What we want to see is that line slanting forward. That means gravity's helping him out and moving him forward. Finally, TLC also produces what's called a power arc. Right at the toe-off portion of the run, you'll notice an arc forming from the heel up to the back of the neck. Notice how his upper body is perpendicular to the ground, but then it arcs down really nicely. You see a lot of power coming off that push off the back. Okay, let's talk about foot strike. Your toes should be straight ahead, and you want to be landing flat or slightly on the ball of your feet. So toes straight ahead may seem like a silly concept, but even the slightest duck foot or pigeon toe can really affect your stride length, especially over long distances. So when I'm talking about toes straight ahead, I'm meaning that your foot should be exactly straight, moving in the direction you're running right there, without any pigeon toeing or duck footing. So if you look at this picture here, we want the toes pointing in the way of the green line, not the two red lines. If you think maybe you lose half an inch if you pigeon or duck, take that over a marathon, and that's quite a lot of distance. For the actual foot strike, a lot of people misconceive this. They might say that Brandon is heel striking right here, but his weight isn't actually over his foot yet. Right there it is. Now his center of gravity has traveled over his foot, similar to the forward contact line. And if you have a look, that's his true foot strike right there. So notice that his heel is even slightly coming off the ground there, so he's got a nice forward forefoot strike going there. So hip flexibility is probably the biggest thing I think that runners can do to improve their running right away. We want to look at how open your hips are at the maximum stride length. So we're going to talk about that with Brandon's stride here. So max hip angle happens right about there. We're talking about the angle from the hip joint to the two knees. And if you look at Brandon here, draw the line, it's almost 90 degrees. Hitting 90 degrees is fantastic. Some will hit a little bit more, and you have to be running pretty fast to achieve that max hip angle. One of the biggest things to get that hip angle is flexibility and getting your hips to actually open up or rotate. So if we were looking down from you from above, they would actually rotate this way out, kind of the formation of a clock. So your hip is loose and it actually rotates out behind you. Here's a shot of it from the side. So it's actually rotating around. It allows for more hip opening, and you'll get more travel from your stride that way. Finally, stride length. There's 4 things that we're going to look at. A short lever at the hip is very important. The length of a stride comes from what happens behind you. The ankle joint should pass right through the knee joint, and if everything works out just right, your stride length will be about the same as how tall you are. So we'll look at these 4 things with Brandon. So what I'm talking about with the short hip lever is how tight the leg comes through. If you notice right there, that lever is really tight. Notice how tight his heel is to his butt. Now imagine if his leg was long like this, like the red there, that'd be much harder to move through than the tight, sharp hip angle. When I tell people to lengthen their stride, they tend to lengthen it out in front of them. But Brandon is showing how high his heel comes up. He just lets it float. Let it float out behind you, and that's actually where a lot of your stride length is going to come from, by letting it just let it go and let it float up behind you. Also, you can notice in the same shot, his ankle joint is passing right by his knee joint. When you're striding optimally, that's right where you want your ankle joint to go, right past the knee joint, right there. If it's higher, you're probably overstriding, or you're understriding. Finally, that stride length equaling your height. I'm going to freeze him at a takeoff point here, right there. Kind of keep an eye on where his left foot is. Then I'm going to take him to the next landing. It's going to take off right about there. So if we look back to where his left foot left and we draw a line to where he landed, it's just about how tall he would be if he was standing up straight. That's kind of the holy grail, if you can get your stride length to be as tall as you are. So quick review. Posture: we want to be tall, lean forward and tuck your core. Have a forward contact line. You want that power arc. Foot strike, you want your toes straight ahead, land flat, or forward on the front of your foot. Your hips as loose as possible. Get a max hip angle and open that hip rotation wise. Finally, your stride length, you want a nice and short hip lever. The length happens behind you, just let it fly behind you. Ankle joint passes through the knee joint, and try to achieve your height with your stride length. Hope all of this helped, and thanks to Brandon for helping me make the video. And please feel free to contact me at my website, hbcoaching.com.